I was thinking about it in this class, since this class started, there's really a number of different support aspects that exist for you if you're really serious about establishing a meditation practice. Since I've been teaching this class, I've written 2 books that really are an expression of the wisdom teachings that are associated with the practice of meditation. And I wrote those books so that the people who come to the class would have something akin to a textbook, something to refer to, something to read that will review a lot of the concepts that I share here, so that you can begin to develop an understanding that supports your practice of meditation. So, those 2 books are on Amazon, right? The first book was called Enlightenment Made Easy, and then the second book was called Dying to Live, right? So those were initially meant to be for you, for the people that come to the class, so that they have something that they can review that is the material that are the teachings, the wisdom teachings that are associated with the practice of meditation. And then the other thing that happened is that I started to record the talks at the class and post them on YouTube. So now there's a YouTube channel with 260-something talks that are available. So when you're attempting to establish a meditation practice, it's very important to understand where all this comes from, and to understand that while it does work to reduce stress, right? And that's the contemporary version of it, the mindfulness-based stress reduction. While it does work to reduce stress, that the original intention of meditation was not to reduce stress, but to create a process in which the practitioner comes to see things as they are, to establish a practice in which the practitioner, through the practice, begins to recognize, begins to notice things, and begins to recognize that the ordinary, everyday way that a person is functioning in the world as the world is, leaves the person in a state of ignorance. And so what I'm saying when I say that is that your everyday common person, your typical human being, is ignorant. But they don't know they're ignorant, right? They think that what they think and what they know is the truth. They think that what they think and how they see things is the way things are. And from the teachings in the East, one of the understandings that we have is that mistake, the idea that most people have, that they know reality and that they know who they are and they know how things work, the mistake that people are living in has them suffer. Because if you don't know who you are, and if you don't know what's real, if you don't know what's true, then, as they say in the Eastern teachings, you're dreaming. You're operating in an illusion. You're operating in a reality that is primarily given by thought. It's a reality that's primarily given by the thought process. Yeah, and so human beings have evolved way beyond other forms of life on the planet, right? Human beings have evolved way beyond other forms of life on the planet. Right? And the ability that they have to be sophisticated in terms of technology and all the other ways that human beings have evolved has been a function of thinking, right? Has been a function of thinking. People think about everything. People use the thought process, right, to think about the past. This is a unique quality that we have as human beings. We can think about the past. We can think about the future, right? We can review things and discover new ways to do things, new technology, and so forth and so on. The problem is that with all that brain power and with all that thinking ability and all of what that's provided for us in terms of technology and sophistication, right, that because even though that's the case, if you don't know who you are, and if you really don't know what is real and what is true, all that thinking and technology can be dangerous. because your orientation is a mistake, right? And if your orientation is a mistake and you have that kind of technology and you have that kind of weaponry that comes from that kind of technology, then you're in a dangerous situation. And the reason that that's the case is because through the thought process, we come to know ourselves as an object. Through the process of a thought process, we come to know ourselves the way we come to know everything else. We make what we are an object of our thinking, right? We make what we are an object of our thinking. So then we end up with Descartes said, I think, therefore I am, right? Yeah, we make who we are an object of thinking, and therefore it seems as though I think, therefore I am. You know, that through thought I have come to know who I am, right? And so what do people conclude? They conclude that they think they are a physical body. They conclude that they think they are a person or a personality. They think they are a psychological construct that has a name, that is unique, that has certain abilities, that has certain desires, and so forth and so on. And then people live their life thinking that they are something that only exists in thinking. People live their life thinking that they are something that only exists in thinking. And this is why in Buddhism they talk about the ordinary human being as a hungry ghost. A hungry ghost. Why? Because the word ghost is talking about something that doesn't really exist. And the word hunger is talking about something that is insatiable, right? So a human being, given who human beings think they are, and given how human beings think it is, they live in a constant state of dissatisfaction, you know, constant state of wanting more of what feels good and less of what doesn't feel good. And because of that condition, and because people experience themselves to be, or think of themselves more accurately, to be separate from one another, and think of themselves to be separate from life, from the world, right? That sets up a situation in which your survival becomes a matter of being afraid and feeling threatened. And so you are dealing with what you're afraid of and what you feel threatened by, which is other people and life, because life is unpredictable, right? Anything can happen. You can get killed, you know, by a hurricane, you know. So life is unpredictable and threatening. Other people are unpredictable and threatening because they see you as a threat, so you see them as a threat, right? We're separate from one another. There's only so much stuff to go around here. So given the misunderstandings and the misperception of reality and the brain power that people have, right, it brings us to the situation that we find ourselves in right now. It explains the evening news, right? It brings ourselves to the situation we find ourselves in which we feel a low-grade level of threat all the time, right? In which we live in a fear-based reality that's generated by thinking all the time. So these wisdom teachings are telling us you can get free. The truth will set you free. These wisdom teachings are telling us that you can experience the truth of what you are and correct the mistake, and over time, through the practice of meditation and through understandings that come from these ancient teachings, you can develop a new way of being in this world. You can develop a new understanding of what you are. You can develop a new perception of reality, a perception of reality that works, a perception of reality that allows you to relax, allows you to enjoy life, right? And so these teachings are very old, but they've never gained traction because the condition in which people live in is like being asleep. It's like being asleep. And the reality that people consider to be real is not one that there's a direct experience of, but one that we just believe in. The reality that people consider to be real is one that they believe in, that they're told is reality, and they accept that. That's not an experience of the truth. It's just an accepted presentation of reality that gets passed on from generation to generation. And so we're living in a state of ignorance. I don't know if any of you remember, a while back there was somebody who, I think they went into Amish school or something and killed children, a bunch of children, right? And people who studied this phenomena and how it affected the Amish community, because of how unique they are, were really surprised and taken back by the fact that the same night this happened, the people in that community got together and prayed for the person that did the murdering, right? So they live in a community, they live in a society, right, that believes in forgiveness, that believes in peace, and so forth and so on, which is consistent with the way things occur for people who practice meditation and study the wisdom teachings, that you end up with that way of seeing everything. It's a way of being, and it's a way of perceiving yourself and reality in life. So yeah, I think that they do. And that's part of the reason that they're living the way they're living, is because they recognize that the general reality that people are living in society is unworkable. That people are suffering from depression, anxiety, they're suffering from addiction, right? All the things that happen for people when the condition that you're experiencing is one in which it's primarily suffering, so your life becomes about avoiding suffering. Your life becomes trying to stay comfortable, trying to have pleasure, and to be on the lookout at all times for the threats around you at all times. To avoid pain, to avoid being attacked, to avoid feeling threatened. And the problem is, again, in terms of the sophistication that has come about through the thought process, we have thought ourselves into a situation in which who we think we are, right, is not real. It's not the reality of who we are. And so we're operating in a way that's unnecessary. It's not necessary for human beings to experience their life all the time with a sense of apprehension and a sense of concern and a sense of dis-ease, being in a sense of dis-ease, feeling that you can't really relax, feeling that you can't really relax and you can't really enjoy your life. So this practice, and the reason that I set it up this way with the books and with the YouTube video and everything, because I understand to come out of the condition that most human beings exist in is not an easy thing to do, right? Because if you practice meditation and you study these teachings and develop these understandings, right, you become one of a very small percentage of people on the planet. And you have to live with the rest of them, right? So you have to walk around and operate in a world in which people are coming from an ignorant, unconscious place and behaving in very destructive ways with one another. So that's the world for the most part. And then if you study meditation and develop an understanding of these teachings, you start to see the possibility you can come out of that misery, you can come out of that and be in a place in which there is real peace, be in a place in which unconditional love starts to make sense. And as this process continues, as you continue to meditate, there's revelation. The word revelation, meaning things start to get revealed to you. Things start to get revealed to you. In other words, you start to see things that have always been there that you didn't notice. And the biggest thing that you begin to see that has always been there that you didn't notice was you. That's an amazing statement if you think about it. The biggest thing that you've ignored that has cost you the most is you.
When you say you, what do you mean?
I mean the awareness that is the reality of what you are. That's been ignored. Human beings ignore human beings ignore themselves. Human beings ignore what they are and give all their attention to what they think they are. And they live the life that of a person that they think they are, that actually isn't real. So ignorance means that you've lived your life giving your attention and your energy to an unreal reality, and you've lived your life giving your energy and attention to the experience of who you are that's a mistake, that's not real. And so through meditation, what are we doing? we're moving attention away from the thinking activity to being aware of the breath and the body. And when you do that, if you do it correctly, and this is something that I've been pointing out recently because it's very important. If you do it correctly, you will notice when you're not thinking. If you do it correctly, you will notice when you're not thinking, and you will notice that it's possible for you to be aware of what's happening without thinking and know what's happening. This is a very important thing because most people think if I don't think, I won't know what's going on. But right now, if you look around this room, right, you don't freak out because you are terrified because you don't know where you are. If you look around this room, you don't freak out because you're terrified because you don't know where you are. Because the awareness that is the reality of what you are can immediately recognize and know what it's looking at. So when you look around this room, you don't have to go from one thing to the next and say, okay, that's blue, I learned that in school. This is the, you don't have to go through things one thing at a time and think about each thing in order to know what it is. Awareness immediately knows what everything is. But we don't give that much attention. We don't understand the power and the value of awareness. And most of all, we don't understand that awareness is actually what you are. It's what we are. So when that mistake begins to get seen through the practice of meditation, because when we move attention out of the thinking activity and we pay attention to the body breathing, because there's no thinking, the mistaken idea of who you are isn't getting generated. Because the way it gets generated is by thinking, right? If I ask you who you are, you're going to think about the answer, aren't you? Yeah, you're going to tell me what you think you are. That's what you're going to tell me, what you think you are, right? But when we practice meditation, we're learning to experience not thinking. We're learning to experience not thinking. We're learning to practice paying attention to the body breathing and noticing that we can do that. We can be aware of the body breathing without thought happening. And when we're aware of the body breathing without thought happening, we're having a direct experience of the truth. We're having a direct experience of reality. What is the reality? The reality is I am the awareness that is aware of the body breathing. There's no thinking, and so there's no thinking about what I am or what's happening. There's a direct experience of what I am and what's happening. Right? I am the awareness of the body breathing. And since I am the awareness of the body breathing, part of what's happening that's a direct experience is that I cannot be something that I am aware of. I cannot be something that I am aware of. If I'm aware of the body, I must not be the body, right? I cannot be something that I can see. If I can see it, it's not me, right? There is a subject and object relationship, right? You have a subject and object relationship with your body. You can see it, can't you? Yeah, you can feel it, can't you, right? If you were being it, there would be no distance between you and it in order to see it or feel it. Do you follow that? If you were being it, there would be no distance between you and it to see it or feel it. Therefore, when you're practicing, you're getting a direct experience that you're not a physical body. When you practice meditation, you're getting a direct experience that you're not a physical body. And that direct experience that you're not a physical body, and that direct experience that you're the awareness, not a thought, that information is getting transmitted back to the brain when you're practicing meditation. So you are changing your brain when you're practicing meditation, and you're reorganizing it, and you're providing data that can have the brain start to function realistically, that can have the brain start to function with information about who you really are, can have the brain function about information about what is really happening. And so then you can begin to see the possibility that is spoken of in the Eastern teachings. The possibility of transformation. What's transformation? It means you can actually be what you actually are versus what you thought you were. That's you're transformed. You're a different form than you thought you were. That's transformation. That happens naturally through the practice of meditation and the learning of these teachings, right? And then they have transcendent wisdom, right? In the Eastern teachings, they talk about transcendent wisdom. Transcendent wisdom means It's the wisdom that allows you to transcend the illusion that people experience to be reality. Transcend the illusion of reality and experience things as they are. Transcend the suffering of thinking that you're a limited human being, a separate limited human being that is limited by a physical body. It's possible to transcend that and experience the awareness that you are, and that experience of that awareness is a natural experience of being happy. It's a natural experience of having peace. It's a natural experience of seeing things clearly. It's a natural experience of being able to enjoy yourself. You can't enjoy yourself if you don't know who you are. You can't enjoy yourself if you think you're something that you're not, and that which you think you're not is constantly changing and completely neurotic. How can you enjoy that, right? But you can enjoy yourself if you know that what you are is like the space in this room, and you know that, that everything that's happening can happen without it affecting you, without having any negative connotations or any meaning. You can be present to life the way life is. You can enjoy yourself, right? And when you begin to have that experience, which is the case when you begin to practice meditation consistently the way it's meant to be done, then you swallow the hook. You've actually already swallowed the hook, most of you guys. Right? Because once you hear the teaching, once you hear the word, once you hear the possibility that's available to you, and once you come to an understanding that this is not just some good idea, right, but this is wisdom teachings that go back thousands of years, right? Whether we're talking about Greece or we're talking about China or Japan, in the oldest places in the world, there are people who have contemplated, meditated, and studied the human experience and saw through the illusion. So that information is more available to you and me now than it ever was because of the internet. So the takeaway for this is if you have a sense of what's possible through the practice of meditation and through the practice of being a student of the wisdom teachings, if you understand what's possible, then you have to act on that understanding, which means you have to deal with your mind, which your mind is not oriented to meditation. So you have to deal with that, and you have to establish a practice, and you have to take advantage of all of the support available to establish a practice because you're going to need it, right? I mean, if you have done any meditating outside of the class, you know what I'm talking about, right? Your mind will actively attempt to stop you from meditating, right? Because according to the program that the mind is running, if you don't think, you'll die, right? So there's a threat there. That's why when you sit and attempt to meditate and you sit still, you feel restless because the mind wants you to move, wants you to stop, see? So to establish a meditation practice, you have to understand why you're doing it. You have to understand the importance of it because it's going to be a very challenging process. And you have to understand the need for support, meaning that you need guidance. You need a teaching to depend on to establish a foundation for the practice. These need to be ongoing things, and you need to establish a practice that is consistent, that you do every single day. If you do that, at some point in time, you'll start to see. At some point in time, that's why they call people who do these practices and teachings over time, eventually they call these people seers. Seers. Because you start to see, you start to wake up and you start to see what's really going on versus what you were imagining what was going on or what you believed was going on because of the conditioning that you experienced in the world. So I really, it's encouraging to me to see that there are a number of people here that have been coming to the class consistently, and that there are people who are hearing the message and are interested and are studying it and are practicing it. And that's because it's true, and that's because it works. But you've got to get to a place where you're connected with that directly and experiencing that directly, and that takes a little bit of time and it takes a little bit of practice and meditation. When you get to that place, you'll know why you're doing it. You'll know why you're doing it because you'll start to experience what it's like to be alive and awake. You'll start to experience what it's like to experience enjoyment, enjoying yourself, enjoying the experience of being the awareness. You start to experience enjoying life because you realize that life is not threatening. life is not threatening. And it's not threatening because who you are can't be threatened. It's not threatening because what you are as a spirit, which is not physical, which is like the space in this room, right, cannot be hurt or harmed. Cannot be hurt or harmed. And if that's the case, then you're free to really enjoy life with abandonment, right? You can enjoy life with abandonment, like Bucky Fuller. Buckminster Fuller was going to commit suicide at the age of 30, right? Very intelligent person, right? And he just didn't see any point, right? And then he thought to himself, wait a minute, what if I continue to live, but I do commit suicide, but I continue to live anyway as if I'm not here? Then, you know, I'm living as if I'm not here, so I can do anything. Nothing can happen to upset me or hurt me because I already resigned. Right? Like I resigned from the job, but I'm going to go to work anyway. See what happens, right? But you see, the thing is, the thing that's different for me than it used to be, right? One of the many things that's different for me than it used to be is the resistance is not something that has much traction. It doesn't determine what I do. That's the key, right? It doesn't determine what I do. So, you know, regardless of the circumstances, regardless of what thoughts arrive in the mind or what feelings are going on, right? That the fact that I meditate anyway, right, is an indication that I am aware of the truth, and therefore these patterns that keep playing in this mind that wants to resist can't control me. Can't control me. So the thing. And the thing about the difference that it makes is that I can tell you there was a time in my life when I look back at it, the only way I can describe my behavior was that I was infantile. That's a hell of a statement because I'm talking about an adult, right? When I look back at myself and my behavior before I practiced meditation and learned what I learned, right, I was acting as if I was an infant, like a child. And that's the way human beings are. You want your way, don't you? You want it your way, right? And if you don't get it your way, you start having an annoyance. That annoyance turns into more than annoyance, right? And before you know it, you're kicking and screaming, just like an infant, right? All right, enough said, right? So the next class, so take advantage of the YouTube videos and the books, you know, please. They're there for a reason because you need that support to do the practice. See you next time.